Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to some all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode we are setting sail in our Tier 6 American destroyer known as the Farragut, a destroyer of much love since I first bought it, and one that I've been playing a lot recently in order to get my hands on my Tier 7 Mahan. We are on the map Trident in a standard battle and sailing alongside our friend Zaron, who is in their Tier 6 Russian cruiser known as the Bediani. Now the emphasis of today's gameplay is not going to be on squad work. It is more of a solo analysis, but in terms of what destroyers bring to the table, especially with the end game. Now I don't know about you, but personally in my experience with World of Warships so far, I've noticed that a lot of destroyers, especially when teams are made up of say 3 destroyers within the pack of 12 ships available to each team, those destroyers will typically get themselves knocked out of the game within the first half, or at least 2 of the 3 will, and then the team will be left with just a single destroyer. Now I want to emphasise in this gameplay the importance of keeping destroyers alive. Now it will depend of course depending on what destroyer you play, whether it be the run and gun style that the Russians encompass, or alternatively the stealthy torpedo fashion that the Japanese encompass. We're in the middle here of our American destroyer. We do not have the stealth torpedo capability, with only a 6.5 km torpedo range for a spotting distance of 7.6 km, but we will make do, with our firing range being 12.6 km, and with our detectability after firing being 11.4 km, we have a 1.2 km stealth gap for shooting at opponents. But that's a lot of numbers already, let's calm down a little bit. So we started off in the north and we're making our way into the centre of the map. Zaron is going to be a little bit independent of us, i.e. we're split in different ways here. We are making our way to the centre, he is making his way eastwards. We've spotted already an enemy Cleveland. Now the idea by going down to the centre of the map here is that I'm trying to provide a little bit of vision for my team in order to show to them, right, this is what's coming your way. And we also picked up on the most important enemy ship with respect to our own, and that is their Tier 7 American destroyer, the Mahan, who would be able to cut us apart quite easily as they are using the B-hull as depicted here. Therefore they have 5 127mm cannon compared to our 4 127mm cannon, whereby we have the C-hull on our Farragut. Now this Mahan is being very aggressive here, trying to get us out of the game, and it is advisory that they do so as we take out their steering, temporarily because they'll probably use their damage control repair party. Now we're continually trading shots here, but as we can see, the health on our ship is dwindling, the Mahan's keeping quite a health ball available to them. So we have to deploy our smoke as we were getting pushed towards the western side of the map and into the line of that York, the German cruiser coming up on the western side for the enemy team. But now we're going to turn this to our advantage. The York does not know that we are coming for them as we deployed our smokescreen. The Mahan has had to retreat due to the fire coming from our teammates up in the north. So now we're going to make our way towards the York and load some armour piercing. We are close enough to try and go for the Citadel, and we have an approximate broadside here. Well, unfortunately, as you're going to see, because the York is engaging a number of friendlies on our team, they are turning away from us, and this means we've got a very bad angle for our armour piercing shells, which are now starting to penetrate, but as the York begins to turn more and more, they will begin to ricochet, as just shown. We also launched down a stream of torpedoes, and as we retreat back here, watch what happens with the torpedoes. The York is not going to get away, but a smokescreen suddenly appears. Wait for it. Now, that's the enemy Farragut, who has tried to protect the York, and they've sailed right into the torpedo screen, and we've taken both ships out for a first blood award, a double strike, and a devastating strike on the Farragut. I must admit, I did not expect that to happen. But it just goes to show you that sometimes it's not always the best idea in your destroyer to run up and try and protect a friendly cruiser if they're in a really disadvantageous position, such as that York there who clearly overextended upon reflection. Now it appears as though this enemy Cleveland was coming up but seems to have actually turned away and has got themselves marooned on an island. They're trying to reverse out. We have been a little bit conservative, making sure to hide ourselves in case the Cleveland had their guns trained towards us, as if they do open fire on us they'll rip us to pieces if they are accurate. So we're going to throw some shells in here, as we have a smoke screen between us and the Cleveland. Our teammates are spotting him, and they've got no one to spot us for them. Our fire is a little bit inaccurate here, and this is bad play on my part, I must admit, and natural dispersion taking its course as well. We have to count both factors in. But I must admit my accuracy is rather poor in this match, so I apologise for that. I'm not doing the Farragut justice in that regard. But we are starting to get some good shots off here and doing a good amount of damage, helping to take out the Cleveland. And very shortly the Cleveland will get dispatched by one of our teammates. And now we're in a nice position. The western side of the map seems to be falling to our team, and the eastern side seems to be pressed very heavily by the enemy team, but our teammates are holding out for the time being, including Sauron. Now, second enemy York has come this way, but is beginning to retreat back towards the south, back towards their capture zone, and the New Mexico has also been spotted. If you're wondering why I'm using the zoom function to follow my shots here, it's just to see whether they're going on a line which is going to hit the York or at least fall close. Because at the end of the day, with the low muzzle velocity and the high trajectory arc of our 127mm cannon shells, even if I do not hit with them, the idea is that we put a lot of shells towards the York and make them have to swerve rather than sail in a straight line. It drops their speed and makes them more susceptible for high velocity fire from our friendly ships, i.e. cruisers and battleships that we are supporting. Now here, we're just trying to sit slightly out of range of the New Mexico, who is sailing away gradually back towards the eastern side of the map. We'll very shortly be able to fire without being spotted. The New Mexico is about to hit 11.4 kilometers distance from us, and that's where we'll be able to stealth fire on them. And the idea here is that we can do a little bit of damage and hopefully cause a fire. It can be incredibly infuriating if we can cause the New Mexico to exhaust their damage control repair party and then us or a teammate set them on fire once more. They will bleed a lot of health very gradually. So we're just continuing to fire for the time being. We're not being very forward in our play here, we're holding back a little bit, and perhaps this is playing against our team, because as a destroyer we should be more towards the front. You can see on the minimap that a friendly cruiser is actually leading the way here, and we're falling behind a friendly battleship. We're trying to make our guns work for us, and work for the team. And unfortunately, whilst we are getting a good number of hits on the New Mexico, we're starting to fall right at the tip of our range here, and we're going to give up very shortly and trying to set them on fire. It is not our day, probability has not been on our side, and now we must change tactics. I look over and see that Sauron is in a very, very bad state. 341 health out of 30,000 available approximately. I'm going to make my way back, because I've put a lot of time now on the western side of the map, and we, as a destroyer crew, need to try and spread ourselves. I made the point that we're not focused down on one flank, we have the mobility, the speed, and the versatility in our American destroyer in order to be able to support our teammates on all sides of the map, depending on how the situation changes. If we press forward further south now, we could potentially get into the cap and just stealth cap, but the thing is, that means that we're going to be holding ourselves to a particular role, and it will also mean that we're sitting out in the open and hoping that the enemy team does not try and pull back off the eastern side. So let's go support our allies out, and they're gradually falling down on the east, and we need to make sure the enemy team does not sneak around and take the cap, i.e. take our flag before we can take theirs. A mistake I've made a number of times, and witnessed a number of times as well. So we make our way. I'm shouting out over TeamSpeak to Sauron at the moment, do you want me to rush over there so I engage my speed boost, in order to try and defend him and put up a smoke screen if needs be. And we can see that the enemy shores and the enemy Miyoko are really pressing forward here. This is becoming a bit of a death match. In terms of ships engaging each other at quite close ranges, our friendly Atlanta going head to head with the Miyoko and also taking some fire from the shores, and we're trying to throw some long range shots down on the Miyoko here to help out. As we can see, they're more harassment shots than anything else. Again, my accuracy is not up to scratch, but these are shells just aimed to try and help. If one of them hits, it may make the difference between life or death for our team. And the Miyoko gets knocked out by one of our allies, the Atlanta, and we head towards Sauron at this point. I've got my smoke screen ready, we're linking up with him, and we're going to put ourselves in front of him for the time being, just to try and help keep him alive. In the meantime, we look south and we can see that the New Mexico, and I believe it was the York from earlier, if it's still alive, are gradually sauntering along towards the southeastern corner of the map. Although it would appear as though there's actually two enemy battleships now in the south, rather than a York, so perhaps that got knocked out. We do not know. Making our way back over towards the east then, we can see that the enemy shores is about to get knocked out, very low HP pool, they're not a problem anymore. Looking over at the Fuso, however, it's a different story. We can also see another enemy battleship in the southeastern corner making their way back towards the central south region. So we called it right not going full south, simply because we would have had to have bumped into a third battleship. So we try throwing some shots down the shores here, though we can see they get knocked out by Z. He gets a good shot off there, knocking it out. And now we have a Fuso and a New York in front of us. Now for the time being we can just stealth fire on them. And one thing we have not accounted for yet is the existence of the Mahan. Notice that there's an enemy destroyer left, that is the enemy Mahan, and they are going to be a problem. Because, as destroyers exist for longer and longer periods in the game, they can have a greater effect, or at least I hope to demonstrate that today. Now as soon as we say that, the Mahan appears, and they're quite close. They're aiming at Sauron straight away to take him out, and they're going to do so very shortly. Unfortunately, we drifted a little bit too far to be able to use our smokescreen to help support Z, but always another day. We're going to make up for this now, hopefully. So we throw down some speculative torpedoes here using our smokescreen to shield us. We get an incapacitation on the Mahan. Not sure what was incapacitated, I did not see or it did not come up. And our torpedoes are merely there to provide a screen. The Mahan was getting within roughly 6.5 kilometers range. We may get a hit. We may cause them to divert out towards their friendly ships. It is just us and one friendly cruiser up here at the time being. And really, we are alone because our friendly cruiser is heading away. Now the Mahan decides to engage us fully here, and we need to keep moving because there's two enemy battleships, and if they throw shells towards us, if one of them hits, we're going to take a beating if it's high explosive. We get straddled by the enemy battleships, and then we take a very nasty hit from the enemy Fuso. We can see we lost 3,000 there in terms of our health. I'm starting to panic a little bit here. You can probably notice that in the fact my accuracy is very poor at this point, and I'm just begging myself to calm down at this point and think, right, kill the Mahan, don't worry about the two battleships. The further we get away, the harder it is for them to hit us. Just keep going side to side. As we can see, our accuracy is now coming more under control, and the Mahan is starting to sail in straight lines a little bit more, perhaps getting a little bit overconfident they can take us out. We get a very nice set of hits there, taking out another item on the Mahan and also setting a fire. And with our final burst, we knock them out, and the Mahan lands a huge number of shots on us after straddling us, which leaves us on 837 health. Now if we play that a little bit more accurately, we would have had a lot more health available to us, but we are going to make do. We're never going to give up. Optimism ahead, as we always say. So, it is us and a friendly cruiser holding the northern section of the map, holding our cap. We've got a number of battleships and cruisers down in the south trying to capture the enemy flag. And we can see a Haruna, a Congo, a New Mexico and the York, which we were talking about earlier, are trying to defend the southern flag for the enemy team. In the meantime, we're going to try stealth firing on the New York and the Fuso, which are gradually making their way towards our cap circle. Now we cannot afford to get spotted. It's simply because we do not have the health. The enemy secondaries on those battleships would be able to hit us and knock us out most likely before we could get off a suicidal torpedo run. And we do not want to throw our ship away, we are in a prime position. As we can see here, at long distance we can still drop quite a bit of fire down the New York and gradually scratch off their health. Another 3 hits doing 1,782 damage for example, and we set a fire on the New York. Brilliant. So that means if they have not used up their damage control repair party, they have to activate it now. And it looks as though that fire is going on for a little bit, as they are draining health. So this is perfect, we're putting pressure on them, simply because now they know they're going to drop their health, so they're going to have to use their consumables that they have left in order to try and counter this. And by exhausting them, we put them in a weaker position. In the meantime, because we're not having to directly engage our foes, and we hold our fire here because the Fuso is now within spotting distance of us if we happen to fire, because we're not in the engagement distances and not having to worry about being evasive, we can take our time in reloading our smokescreen, in making sure that we have our speed boost ready. And here we're going to get a little bit closer towards the Fuso because now we're in that range whereby these two enemy ships, these two enemy battleships, are heading towards our cap. And because we're heading towards them, if we launch our torpedoes towards them, we can make sure that even if they are out of our range of our torpedoes, they will sail into our torpedo range. And we're going to use this as a buffer as well, as our friendly cruiser, I should say, that was off to the side of us, just a little bit north of us, gets knocked out by these two ships, and it is just us now, and another friendly cruiser who seems to have pulled back from the south, and made their way up here to help support. Now our friendly torpedoes from the cruiser that passed away are also making their way towards the enemy Fuso. We're going to misjudge this a little bit. If I remember correctly here, the torpedoes fall just short. One of them was destined to hit the Fuso almost. But we take what we can get. And most likely we probably made the Fuso think at this point, and the New York indeed think at this point, oh Jesus Christ, there's still an enemy destroyer up here. Because notice, we are still alive, and this game is still growing old. It is not at the end quite yet. Now our torpedoes run out of range here. The Fuso is evading a torpedo from our friendly cruiser who got knocked out. And the other cruiser that's come back to support us has really pulled back off to the west. It's trying to use range to their advantage. A bit difficult with the superior ranges of battleships, but I can understand their playstyle. They believe that their greater manoeuvrability, perhaps, and their greater speed will allow them to be elusive and avoid the fire. We set up our smoke screen here as our friendly cruiser is spotting these two enemy battleships, and we want to try and set another fire, and also use this smoke screen to make sure that we can just sit here and let the Fuso get close. We are sitting on one side of the cap, our defending cap, versus the Fuso who's coming into it to try and capture it. We set a fire on the Fuso, that's perfect. We want another one because they've just put it out, it looks like. so we want another one once the damage control repair party is over in order to bleed their health. But by luring them in gradually now, because they want the cap circle and we're just going to sit here, we can reverse and begin to line up our torpedo run. Line that up gradually here. We are expecting the Fuso to hug the island and then gradually come around. The idea being they want to put pressure on the cruiser that is shooting them from afar and also put pressure on us in our smoke screen. We switch to the New York for the time being to change the pressure, make the Fuso think they've got an easy ride for a short period of time, and also to try and put a fire on the New York because they used their damage control repair party. We can see that to put the fire out from earlier. We would assume so. And we do set another fire. They throw some shots in return, and now as we make our way away, taking fire from the New York, we lay down our torpedo wall, hugging it as closely as possible to the island to attack the Fuso because we expect them to hug the island and make their way round. And our smoke screen is gradually expiring now, so we throw a couple more side shots towards the New York. Unfortunately, it looks as though they actually manually put their fire out. I let the timer go down, and we're going to try and go for another fire, but we do get a little bit of damage off. Now let's take a look at those torpedoes. Sorry, the shells first. Let's set another fire. And we scored 2 torpedo hits, and we caused some flooding on the Fuso. Fantastic! So that means they're going to bleed health, the New York's going to bleed health. Top notch result. So now we can do a lot of damage, and we just need to sail away. Or at least for the time being. Now back in the south, we don't know what's really going on. We can see by the cap circles in the top that it looks as though our team's actually not had a very easy time trying to capture the enemy flag. So what do we do at this point? Well, it's 2 versus 1 down in the south, i.e. 2 friendlies versus 1 enemy ship. We're not sure what it is. I believe, yes, it's an enemy cruiser looking at the screen. Up in the north, we know we have 2 enemy battleships here. They're not very manoeuvrable. We have a friendly cruiser supporting us right out in the west. We're going to let that cruiser take their time and try to get some more shots on the enemy battleships. The Fuso is not overextending, they're actually turning in towards the centre of the cap to prevent us from being able to get a successful torpedo ambush, and they also know they want the capture circle. These battleships are smart, they want the objective. At the moment, I'm just waiting to see whether the cruiser scores a hit. It doesn't look so, and our friendly shores, that's the cruiser that's been firing all the time in long range support, looks as though they're about to take a nasty hit. And in fact they did, the Fuso eliminated them. So it's up to us. We need to prevent the cap. We don't need to kill these ships, however, we just need to hit them. And that is why we're making our way around the rear of this northernmost island. Because these enemy battleships will most likely not have their guns trained this way. And this is the power of keeping a destroyer alive until the end of the game. You have the speed and the flexibility to just lightly harass your opponents. And being able to do this is a wonderful thing when all you need to do is hit your opponents once with a high explosive shell and do a tiny bit of damage in order to prevent the cap. So we make our way around, cutting our speed here, taking our time, making sure we do not overextend. As the battleships are making their way back towards the centre, we're just taking our time. Line up the shot, prevent the cap. The Fuso is severely wounded, and we cause a defend, i.e. we picked up a ribbon. The Fuso is practically crippled, their guns are pointing 180 degrees the wrong way. Let's put a lot of shots into them. Our friendly battleships are capturing and also providing long range support here. We are reversing back behind the island gradually and then putting ourselves a little bit forward. As we set the Fuso on fire, but they were taken out by our friendly battleships, and now we just need to hit the New York. We don't need to kill it, we just need to prevent it from capping. And if we can do this, we've won. Take it easy, speed boost on. What we're going to do now is, instead of trying to hug the island, we're going to head out wide, because we know we can see the New York much more easily than they can spot us. And if we can use our speed boost to give us enough distance, and our team here are telling us we need to hit the BB at least once. If we pull a little bit of distance, fire on them, we may get spotted once, but we only need 1 barrage to hit, and our team can do the rest, even if we have to sacrifice our ship. We make our way out, perfect, they have not spotted us, we're 9.2 kilometers away. We fire a single barrage here, fire our second barrage just in case the first doesn't hit. The guns of the New York are pointing the completely wrong way, all 4 shots hit, 4 defend flag, ribbons put up, 3 more hits, and it's done. We don't need to do any more, we're just going to hold our fire now, let the friendly battleships open fire, and that's the game. Tense, close, but we played it. And with that, and another set of torpedoes off, it's time for us to take a look at the post-game stats. Well, we pulled through in the end, and for the victory we picked up 258,900 silver credits, 4,848 experience, 243 free experience, and 3 awards. The first being First Blood, for scoring the first kill or the first ship destruction in a battle. the second being a devastating strike on the enemy Farragut, for destroying an enemy ship with a single artillery salvo, torpedo salvo, or aircraft by causing damage to over 50% of the destroyed ship's normal HP. And the third award being the double strike for the kills on the Farragut and the enemy York, whereby we must destroy 2 enemy ships, the second target of which being destroyed within 10 seconds of the first one. In terms of the ribbons we picked up for our battle performance, we picked up 142 target hit ribbons, 4 torpedo hit ribbons, 5 incapacitations, 3 enemy ships destroyed, 6 fires set, 3 floods caused, and 5 base defends, and our total tally of damage was 86,968. Looking at our performance compared to the rest of our team, we can see that we came first in terms of base experience earned, picking up 2,424, 756 more than second place on our team. But rather than consider this a carry on our part, I like to think of this as a demonstration of us fulfilling our role for our team, whereby as an American destroyer we used our versatility to great effect, initially leading the charge down the centre of the map, then breaking out westwards to support our team's push, before pulling back towards our capture point up in the north, helping in the defence efforts against the enemy battleships, whilst our friendly battleships, including the 2 that survived, made their case to try and capture the enemy flag before the enemy team could capture ours. Looking at our more detailed report, we can see that we hit a tally of 8 enemy ships, with 5 being damaged and 3 being destroyed on our part. We caused a total of 86,968 HP of damage, which can be broken up as follows. Our main battery, which hit 142 times, dealt 33,332 damage, with 29,867 of this being attributed to the 128 high explosive shells that hit, and in the armour piercing department, we managed to hit with 14 shells that did the remaining 3,465 damage. We were a little bit unfortunate not to have the most ideal angle on the enemy York when we tried to bring them down using armour piercing, but we could always improve in a future gameplay. As for the torpedo damage we dealt, we hit with 4 torpedoes, dealing a total of 25,769 damage, and the rest of our damage, i.e. 27,867 of it, was made up of fires and floodings, whereby our 6 fires caused dealt 11,071, meanwhile our 3 floods dealt 16,796, so we can see how we spread our bleed damage between the fires and floodings rather equally, with just a little bit more in terms of the floodings. But we used both in order to try and cause our opponents to use up their damage control repair parties in order to cause the bleed effect on their health when we caused a subsequent fire or a subsequent flood. Looking at the damage we received, however, we picked up 10,663 out of our total of 11,500 HP, so we were close to death, and the majority of that came from artillery shells, with 17 hitting, dealing a total of 10,519, with 1 armour piercing shell hitting us for 2,300, most likely from the enemy Fuso, and the rest being made up of 16 high explosive shells, the majority from the enemy Mahan. The rest, 144, was consisting of 1 fire. And we should note that our lack of accuracy when going up against the Mahan is why we picked up so much damage. If we'd been a little bit more accurate, perhaps we would have had a little bit more health and could have been a little bit more risky in our approach towards the end. And finally, in terms of our credits and experience earned, we can see it without a premium account, we picked up, after taking our deductions, 217,214 silver credits, and with a ×2 modifier for the first victory of the day in our Farragut, 4,848 experience, putting us very close to getting another skill point for our captaincy, or our commander. So in conclusion then, hopefully today we have demonstrated the importance of staying alive in our destroyers all the way through the course of a game, in this case with the Tier 6 American destroyer the Farragut, whereby despite our rather aggressive opening push down the centre of the map, we made sure to play within our capabilities as a player and the capabilities of our ship, making sure to conserve a good portion of our health for later on, whereby when we saw that the western flank had broken through for our team, we made sure to react to changing circumstances as depicted on the minimap and as called out by our teammate who was playing alongside us via the usage of TeamSpeak, in realising that the eastern flank was falling apart for our team. We were able to come back and support our defensive efforts, initially taking out the enemy Mahan who went toe to toe with us, and thanks to our health pool remaining, we were able to bring them down and use our health pool as a buffer for an adequate accuracy. We then progressed in harassing and defending against the 2 enemy battleships that were pressing towards our capture point, i.e. the Fuso and the New York, and we used our resources and our capabilities in order to make sure they would never capture the point. I had the usage of a smoke screen in order to hide us as we shot at the New York and fired torpedoes at the Fuso successfully, and then we used our speed, manoeuvrability and flexibility to change our position behind a small island to make sure that we could come up behind the Fuso and the New York to put some shots into them and make sure they could not fulfill the capture circle requirements and our team could take the enemy base. Now some of you may be wondering, is this versatility not available in battleships or cruisers? Well, it technically is in different forms. Battleships usually have the longer range guns and therefore have the ability to shoot for very long distances and take down enemy ships from afar by the usage of a number of armour piercing rounds or high explosive, with the armour piercing rounds when hitting a broadside having a very good chance technically of citadelling an enemy ship and knocking it apart when it is at a high health pool. Meanwhile, the cruisers have the ability, sometimes with a good amount of speed and good manoeuvrability, to get into the fight and take a number of hits and put out a large amount of damage, whether it be armour piercing or high explosive. But in both cases the concealment ranges of these ships are not ideal compared to that of destroyers, and we valued our concealment range in our Farragut in being able to fire at our opponents without being spotted, especially in the case of two battleships, and when they got close we used our resources such as the smokescreen to remain hidden, something that cruisers and battleships do not normally have, although I believe there are some exceptions. So this goes to show the versatility that we commanded in our destroyer compared to the versatility that could be commanded in a cruiser or a battleship, and I personally feel that we're the right ship to do the right job in order to help win the day for our team. And so I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships gameplays on my channel. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and fair seas.